Thank you for watching us on YouTube. But did you know that if you're on the go, you can get the full show as a podcast now? You can get our morning breakdown of the most important topics facing our country, news not being covered by the mainstream media, interviews with change-making progressives, and info on what you can actually do about all this. Search for The Damage Report on your favorite podcast app and subscribe so you know when new episodes are ready to go. If it wasn't already obvious that our nation has long failed our students, and in particular low-income students, we've now got the numbers to back it up. And we're lucky on The Damage Report to now be joined by Karan Blair of the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools, who just concluded a report in terms of funding for education in this country. Karan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, good to be here.
It's great to have you here. So you have released your report, Confronting the Education Debt We Owe Billions to Low-Income Black and Brown Students and Their Schools. So in this analysis of education funding, what did your organization find?
So I think you said it right. We found that between 2005 and 2017, Congress has underfunded public schools that serve primarily Black and brown children and children with disabilities by $580 billion. And that is not, I'm not overstating that, that is the number, $580 billion that did not go into the schools and communities of Title I schools and IDEA schools.
So when you hear a number like $580 billion, my first reaction is if you had asked me the total amount of funding that has gone to schools in that time, I would not have guessed $580 billion. So how did we come to a point where it was possible that this funding was supposed to go to these schools but has not gone to those schools? Is that an oversight? Is that a choice?
So it's not an oversight. For us, it is a matter of choices and priorities, right? Because in that same amount of time, the wealth of the 400 wealthiest people in this country grew by about $1.2 trillion. And so what we've seen is choices made to under-resource our schools while giving tax cuts to those who are the wealthiest in this country. And for us, that is the fundamental problem here.
So I saw that the Young Turks has a write-up of this report, and they talk about one thing. There was a law, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, passed under President Johnson, that was supposed to address inequality in funding for education. But as they point out, as you do in your report, in even the first year of that bill, they underfunded the program. So how has it been able to go for decade after decade now with nobody actually funding what the law is supposed to require?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a critical question, and it has been the question that education advocates around the country have been wrestling with and organizing around. Again, we come back to this idea that, when it comes to serving Black and brown kids in this country, those communities have never been a priority. And so while there have been attempts on the part of educators and parents and students to organize to get these resources, we have never actually built the kind of political power necessary to garner those resources. And so for us, even now around the country, there are a number of campaigns where people are demanding deeper and more deliberate investment in our public schools. And so we're continuing that fight, but Congress has not responded to the kind of pressure that we've been putting on Congress.
So I also want to mention in your report, you talk about the funding for students with disabilities. Can you talk a little bit about your findings in that area?
Right, similarly, right? So while the funding for Title I has been seriously under-resourced, IDEA was a mandate. And similar to what you're seeing, since the very first year of this mandate, we have not seen the levels of funding that's been required. And what's happened is that states and school districts are then having to take necessary resources out of their public coffers in order to fund IDEA, because that is an actual requirement. And so all across the board, we find that students are suffering because money, right, limited resources are being diverted from one program to the other in order to fulfill the IDEA mandate. And our proposal is that instead of shifting resources from schools and communities, that we should fully fund Title I, we should fully fund IDEA, we should tax the wealthiest people in this country and corporations and make sure that they pay their fair share, and then move those resources into our public schools.
You know, I couldn't agree more. I'm curious, are there any politicians that you think have the back of people who are pushing for this sort of righting of this long-term wrong?
You know, that's a good question, right? And so on Wednesday, we will stand together as educators and parents and students with Congressman Bobby Scott to call for this kind of investment, right? And Scott and his colleagues have in the past attempted to move bills that would guarantee or demand some of this funding. But again, the sort of bipartisan support that is needed to move these measures have not been existent. Primarily because, again, in this country, we continue to push the needs of children of color and children with disabilities to second and third level priorities. And what we're saying is that if we are to move forward, then we have to prioritize the needs of our Black and brown kids and kids with disabilities.
Well, hopefully more people will take up that battle, because it's hard to imagine a better potential return on investment than funding education for these communities after being.
Absolutely. Now, I would say absolutely. And again, you know, we've been doing this kind of work for a very long time, and we know that it is not accidental, right? We know that this is about race. We know that this is about whether or not, and the degree to which we care deeply about Black, brown kids and those students who have disabilities. And we're saying that moving forward, in the same way Congress, you know, moved resources to rebuild Europe, we're saying that we must see the same kind of investment in our public schools and in our public infrastructure.
I like that analogy to the Marshall Plan. I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, Karan Blair, co-director of the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools, thank you for the work of your organization.
Thank you so much for the time. And if folks want more information, visit our website, educationdebt.reclaimourschools.org.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching this clip from The Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notified of our new videos. And catch The Damage Report every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.